Our next speaker is Ashleigh Morris. Ashleigh is the CEO and co-founder of Coreo, all about circular economy. And she'll be talking about the role of aluminium and why it's important for Australia. Ashleigh, can I hand over to you?
Brilliant. Hi, everyone. So I'm Ashleigh Morris, the CEO and co-founder of Coreo. I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which I am here today, which is the Sunshine Coast, and I pay my respects to the Kabi Kabi and the Jinibara people. So thank you for having me today. I must say I absolutely love Margie and Jeff's presentation, and certainly looking forward to Fiona's and the panel discussion. I'm learning a lot equally, although I have been working in this space for a couple of years now. And so today I want to share with you how we've supported a primary producer, that being Rio Tinto, to expand upon their aluminium recycling here in Australia through connecting up different parts of the supply chain, really thinking more strategically about how do we make this happen and what are those enabling conditions. Now, just to share with you, for those of you who may not be familiar with our organisation and the work that we do, Coreo is very much proudly Australian, but we work with clients all over the world. We take a strategic advisory role, project partner delivery role, and we're all-round doers who really want to take the circular economy out of theory and put it into practice. Now, because the circular economy is a systemic and economic model, we work in all key sectors of the global economy. Primarily, our work, though, here in Australia centres around the resources sector, working with clients such as Rio Tinto, BHP, Anglo and Fortescue, some of our large primary producers, to think about how they embed circularity in what are hard durables, products like aluminium that can exist in perpetuity. Now, for us, we prioritise working on those materials because we want to look at production and consumption of those through a global economy. So, and as Margie really beautifully highlighted in her presentation, aluminium is the most abundant metal, bauxite, which then goes on to produce aluminium. It's one of the most abundant materials in our Earth's crust. It's an incredible product when we're talking about aluminium being durable, flexible, and permeable, and 100% recyclable. Now, we've been producing aluminium very successfully since the 50s, as Margie highlighted, and we are such a major player in the market for this particular product. Now, it's done a lot for our economy in terms of supporting GDP and our prosperity, but it's not been without impact. And of course, we've highlighted and seen some statistics in the previous presentations about that. But our 4 aluminium smelters, just to give you an example, they consume approximately 20% of Australia's entire energy load. And they correspondingly produce a lot of carbon emissions. Although, like all the rest of the speakers, I certainly welcome the decarbonisation of the grid because that will do so much for our key commodities like aluminium. Now, whilst we do produce a lot of aluminium, as said earlier, a lot of it is being sent offshore. And although it's 100% recyclable, our 4 aluminium smelters are not currently recycling very large volumes of secondary aluminium, which is what we really sought to tap into in 2018 when we launched Australia's first circular economy lab. Now, the circular economy lab was a pay-to-play model seeded by government but invested in by industry. And we really brought industry together to think strategically about how we design, develop and commercialise circular economy initiatives. Now, at the inception of the Circular Economy Lab, we had 5 foundation partners. One of those was Container Exchange Queensland, who are our authority that manages the container deposit scheme, collecting glass, aluminium, beverage cans, and also plastic bottles through that scheme. Now, Container Exchange came with us with the intent to really keep our materials onshore here in Queensland that they were successfully collecting through individual and companies participating in depositing those cans. Now, we had to consider and look at the supply chain and the broader network within Queensland and where all of these materials were flowing to. And of course, we identified that Rio Tinto had their operations in Gladstone, being their aluminium smelter and some of their other key facilities. And we had started a conversation with Rio Tinto asking, is it possible to actually use the collected aluminium beverage cans, collected very effectively and quite cleanly through this scheme, seeded by government again, and enable them to be recycled, and then direct that through to a partnership in a supply chain. We also brought Coca-Cola and Mittal into that conversation, given they're one of the largest users of aluminium into the beverage market. And of course, those parties each respectively saw value in participating and joined the Circular Economy Lab. Then for us, it was about taking that hypothesis in question through 3 months of an understanding, ideating, prototyping and validating phase. Now, fast forward from 2018 through to today, the Circular Economy Lab and that particular team have expanded this model. Rio Tinto had proven back in 2015 that you could actually recycle aluminium through their infrastructure, but this was expanding upon that to a greater volume of material being reprocessed. So now, and since 2018, they've been processing 1,000 tonnes of aluminium beverage cans collected through the container deposit scheme, and then are getting that material expanded through to the Coca-Cola Amatil supply chain. Now, where this gets more exciting, and 1,000 tonnes, just to give you maybe some perspective, that's such a small volume comparative to how much bauxite and alumina is coming through, which is at a 500,000 tonne limit for this facility. So we're still only playing here on the margins, but it's a test case to say, could we expand upon this? And what is the value if we do so? So that 1,000 tonnes that's being processed currently is the maximum that they can currently do within the furnaces at this facility. To take it to a next level and increase that total volume, there needs to be an additional investment. And this is where it becomes very powerful when we start to think about the integrated supply chain and how do we create that demand signal for a company and a primary producer like Rio Tinto to make that investment and expand that technology and make sure there's value in doing so, because they already have a market today, as we know, by selling their aluminium product, but not here into Australia predominantly. So what they are looking to do now, they are undertaking a pre-feasibility study to expand that technology in the processing of secondary aluminium. And they're looking to do this across all of their smelters here in Australia. And they're doing this in partnership with Coca-Cola Amatil. Now, Coca-Cola Amatil, who's now been conjoined with Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific Partners, the world's largest Coca-Cola bottler and a beverage can, aluminium beverage can maker, they are intent on creating a world without waste. So for every bottle that they sell, they're going to buy one back, meaning they're going to buy that primary material back and create these closed loops. And they're seeing this as a strategic alignment in supply chain to facilitate this to happen. Now, the power in doing this, just to highlight, and I know Margie mentioned this earlier, is if we are able to successfully expand our secondary aluminium processing market, it can reduce the energy comparative to the virgin product by 95%. So while it's powerful to decarbonize the grid, and the technologies that are being developed like ELYSIS is amazing, we can also be more strategic in how we get maximum product utilization out of a material like aluminium, which will exist in perpetuity. This can also help reshore manufacturing, which is an intent of our Australian government and lots of nations around the world. We are seeing a little bit of a shift in how materials and stocks are going to be valued and how we do keep them more in our localized economies to support jobs, to help the decarbonisation of supply chains. And as Jeff mentioned as well, we are very privileged to also work heavily in the property and development sector with most of Australia's large property developers. And you're very right, they want to decarbonise and reduce embodied carbon into the built product. But it's very hard when we have these supply chains with material flowing through a global economy. So how do we send those demand signals? How do we link things up? And I hope through giving you this example to show that it is possible. We are small scale, but it's starting to expand upon what that strategic value proposition is into our market. And the last thing I want to just note here before I pass over to our next speaker is to say that the circular economy is not just about recycling, although I've really highlighted in this case, in this initiative through the lab. It's more about managing the stocks and flows of materials in our economy. And I think aluminium presents one of the most impactful opportunities for Australia if we can think more strategically and through that integrated mindset about our value chains, supply chains, and how we can then support different sectors and entire economies to decarbonise. So thanks everyone. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take them later.
Ashleigh, thank you very much for that. I like the idea of bringing an integrated mindset to the table and seeing ourselves as a collaboration across the ecosystem of construction and materials. I think integrated is very much the way we see it. And I love the idea, pardon me, I love the idea of circular economy doers at the table for our do tanks. So thank you for that. I like the point that you need now to see a demand signal. We've got the architects in the room, we've got the property developers in the room who I think are giving that demand signal. So from the hand up saying I want it to some volumes and specifics, that must be the next step. So really encouraging what you're saying there, and definitely not off the hook. We'll be coming back to you to talk circularity in the Q&A. So thank you very much.